Alright, we have 5 builds here for you today, and every single build has the exact same stat spread, so you can go back and forth between any of these builds you want in any given playthrough. They're all going to be arcane builds, and they're all going to be super fun to play. Whether it's a bleed build or just a status effect build in general, these builds are going to be awesome for you. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into our first build. Now, our first build is going to be with the Crescent Halberd. This is a rare drop that you can get from the Albinarix and Liurnia of the Lakes, but it's very unique because it has an S scaling in arcane and scales with nothing else. So the best part about this weapon is that you can use any grease you want with it in order to get any status effect and proc that status incredibly fast because of its high arcane scaling, as well as our arcane build that we're using for it. Halberds in general have a super awesome moveset, and even when the greases wear off, you're still going to be doing a decent amount of physical damage with this weapon. Plus the buffs and talismans we've paired with this halberd, it's just going to be a lot of fun for you to play, and it's a little bit different than some of my typical builds because this time I got a chance to use some greases, and that's always really fun. Now, I will say this, if you're going to use blood grease on the weapon, make sure you slide on the white mask as well as the Lord of Blood's Exaltation, and if you're going to do poison grease on the weapon, then make sure you're wearing the mushroom crown as well as the Kindred of Rot's Exaltation when it comes to this build. Now, for the actual build, obviously we're using the Crescent Halberd. We're also going to be using the Dragon Communion Seal because we are going to use some buffs with this. Flame Grant Me Strength and Golden Vow to get that extra 35% physical damage and 15% damage negation. You're also going to be using the Spear Talisman, the Rotwing Sword Insignia. In slot number 3, you can vary. I typically have the Ritual Shield Talisman here, but then you can also have the Shard of Alexander to get the most out of Spinning Slash. For your Flask of Wondrous Physic, you're going to have the Thorny Crack tier and the Green Burst Crystal tier, just for those successive attacks and extra stamina. And this will be the only time that I show the stats in the entire video, so just pause it right here or come back to this if you need to look at it. But we have 50 Vigor, 17 Mind, 24 Endurance, 14 Strength, 40 Dexterity, 9 Intelligence, 25 Faith, and Arcane is at 70. This is a level 170 build, but you can lower the Arcane a little bit and be fine with a level 150. Now, the next build we have for you is one of my favorite ways to play, and that's using dual daggers. This is going to be a Reduvia build, but we are also going to be using the Occult Great Knife in order to get some extra blood loss, so we're not constantly spamming the Ash of War. However, during this footage, you are going to see a lot of Ash of War spamming, so forgive me for that. But this is a great and super fun build to play. It melts bosses incredibly quick, and even if the boss is immune to bleed, which only a very few are, you are going to still be able to do some very decent physical damage as you are attacking incredibly fast. We have talismans that boost Ashes of War, proc attack power boost, as well as give you some damage negation, and overall this just is a very fast way to get through the game, allowing you to soar through the lands between, not having any problems with any bosses. Now, I will be the first to admit that the dagger hitboxes can be a little bit janky at times, but it's only happened to me a few times on a ton of playthroughs, so that shouldn't be much of an issue for you. One of these talismans that we are using can be cycled out just in case you need some more stamina, but we're about to get into that right now. So for this build, we're going to be using the Reduvia and the Occult Great Knife. We're also going to be using the Dragon Communion Seal for our buffs because it scales very well with Arcane, and you also need the White Mask when it comes to your armor. For your talismans, you have the Rotwing Sword Insignia, the Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman, the Lord of Blood's Exaltation, and the Shard of Alexander. If you find yourself not taking too much damage, you can swap out the Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman with the Green Turtle Talisman just for that extra stamina because daggers eat up a ton of stamina. Now, for your flask, you're going to use the Thorny Crack tier and the Green Burst Crystal tier, and the same thing with the last build, we are using Flame Grant Me Strength and Golden Vow for that extra physical damage. So our next build is going to be from one of the most underrated status effects in my personal opinion, and honestly my favorite, and that is going to be a poison build. Poison can be pretty viable, but it gets a really bad rap because it doesn't do as much damage as fast as a bleed build or maybe a different type of status effect build like Scarlet Rot. However, this status builds up the fastest on your enemies, so you are going to be able to proc your Mushroom Crown as well as your Kindred of Rot's Exaltation in order to get that massive damage boost with both of the weapons we're using. So this is going to be a very fun build to play. It does take a little bit of strategy. We do have a few odds and ends here that make the build a little bit interesting in order for you to have a really fun time playing, but at the same time do some viable damage, especially on New Game Plus 4 and 5, which is what you are currently seeing on the recording. We are going to be using the Ash of War Poison Moth Flight because once you poison your enemy, which is incredibly easy to do, you can then use Poison Moth Flight in order to do a poison explosion, taking a massive chunk of health off of your enemy. Also, let me know what poison builds are your all's personal favorite. I know poison can be brought back into a good light within the Elden Ring community, and I know there's those of you guys out there who are really enjoying poison. So let's go ahead and jump right into the build. First and foremost, we have a Poison Uchigatana as well as the Coil Shield. The Coil Shield is going to allow us to proc poison incredibly fast, which is why we're using that here. But when that's not in use, we are using the Serpent Bone Blade for that extra poison buildup as well. For your buffs, you're going to be using the Dragon Communion Seal, which is an Arcane scaling of S, and for your armor, you need to be wearing the Mushroom Crown, so whenever poisoned in the vicinity, you are going to get a damage boost. We're also going to be using the Rotwing Sword Insignia, the Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman, the Kindred of Rot's Exaltation, as well as Shard of Alexander to get the most out of Poisoned Moth Flight. Then for your flask, you're going to be using the Thorny Crack tier and the Green Burst Crystal tier, and for your buffs, per usual, is Flame Grant Me Strength and Golden Vow to stack on that physical damage. Alright, for this next build, hear me out. Okay, just hear me out. Varre's Bouquet. I don't know what to tell you. Just watch, okay? I thought this hammer was really, really horrible, and it's not amazing, but this is a pretty fun build, so watch this. So this build is going to revolve around Varre's Bouquet, and I know that this has a reputation for being the worst weapon in the entire game. In fact, I have even said that myself. However, I wanted to see exactly how good I could make this and if there was a viable build option. And let me tell you, I feel like if your enemy is susceptible to bleed, this weapon just makes your enemy gush. It is absolutely crazy when it comes to your bleed and blood loss buildup. You get 132 blood loss on this weapon, and you can also add blood grease on top of that. However, I wanted to add frost grease in this build, so I get that extra 20% damage whenever I get a massive chunk of frost buildup to go off, as well as the blood loss chunks coming off as well. It's just a very fun and kind of crazy build to use. And considering this weapon is a hammer, I wanted to treat it as such, and the build is going to reflect that. We're going to be using heavy charged R2s, concentrating on critical strikes and boosting that charged heavy R2 as much as possible, while also boosting our attack power through our blood loss that we get very easily with this weapon. And speaking of building up status effects like blood and frost, you can use any grease on this weapon you would like, and with blood tax, the Ash of War that comes with Varre's Bouquet, you are going to build up those statuses incredibly fast, enabling yourself to proc either a White Mask, a Mushroom Crown, Kindred of Rot's Exaltation, or whatever status effect talisman you currently have equipped. So for this build, we have Varre's Bouquet. We're also going to be using the Dragon Communion Seal once more for Flame Grant Me Strength and Golden Vow. We're going to be using the White Mask for a bleed proc attack power boost. We're also using the Lord of Blood's Exaltation, the Axe Talisman, the Dagger Talisman, and the Shard of Alexander. For your flask, you're going to use the Stone Barb Crack tier and the Thorny Crack tier, because these are going to help you get that heavy charged R2 off and break their stance so you can get off those critical strikes. And the very last build we have for you here in this video is going to be the Regalia of Eochaid. It's going to be a arcane build that doesn't rely on any statuses at all, just pure Dex and Arcane. The weapon scales with Dex and Arcane with C in both. However, it is going to scale a little bit more on the Arcane side of things. We're going to focus on the Ash of War, although if you do have two Regalias or another Straight Sword, the dual Straight Sword moveset is absolutely incredible, and you can also use that. Just a disclaimer here, you can also use this exact build with the Mary's Executioner's Sword. However, you will need a little bit more strength than what I currently have. We're also going to throw in a few Dragon Communion incantations here just to mix things up a little bit, but the main star of the show is going to be the Regalia. One thing you will notice about the Ash of War is that it is chargeable, so you can use the Godfrey icon, but you don't always have to charge it. In fact, you need to choose your windows very carefully in which to charge this Ash of War all the way to get the most damage off, or if you're just going to do a quick burst of damage. There's definitely a time and a place to use each option, but as you can see, if you get this Ash of War off fully charged, it's absolutely going to shred bosses like crazy. I have also found with this build that if you use your Dragon Claw to smash the enemy onto the ground, you can then charge up the Regalia of Eochaid's Dancing Blade to its max potential, and once they get up, they will be greeted with an unparalleled amount of damage that will absolutely destroy them. So for this build, you're going to be using the Regalia of Eochaid, also the Dragon Communion Seal, and then armor you can wear whatever you want as long as you're over the 51 poise mark, so you can withstand one hit as you're charging up your Ash of War. I also have the Shard of Alexander, the Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman, the Godfrey icon, and the Rotwing Sword Insignia. If you do have Millicent's Prosthesis, put it right here instead of the Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman, but I didn't get it in my most recent new game, so that's why I'm using this. For your Flask of Wonders Physic, you can use the Stone Barb Crack tier and the Dexterity Not Crystal tier, as the weapon scales very well with Dexterity as well. And per usual with the rest of the buffs, you have Flame Grant Me Strength, Golden Vow, and whatever Dragon Communion incantations you want to put here. I've been using Dragon Maw. And guys, there you have it. That is going to be it for the top 5 fun arcane builds that I've put together, and I hope you guys enjoyed. I know there were some crazy ones in there, but overall I had a lot of fun making this video, and I hope you guys enjoyed watching it. Let me know down in the comments anything that you guys want to see next, or which build was your favorite. I know we're all getting really antsy to get to the Elden Ring DLC. Believe me, I am absolutely ready for it, and I need it to be June now, but With that being said, guys, if you're not subscribed and you're finding value in the channel, feel free to subscribe, hit that bell notification on your way out. I'll leave a ton of videos here for you on the screen to check out, and until next time, stay safe, enjoy the game, and I'll see you in the next one.